Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted that we're joined today by Mai Ling Chan, who is the founder and CEO of Xceptional Lab. Mai Ling, thank you for joining us. I'm delighted to have you here. We were just chatting before coming on air about our ADHD and so on. But tell me a bit more about Xceptional Labs and what it is and what you're all doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I just want to let you guys know how honored I am. I know this is an amazing long-running show, and just to be here with you guys is incredible. Usually I'm listening and watching instead of being on it, so thank you. So Xceptional Lab is one of my new babies. I call them my babies. I've been in and out of companies for the last about 12 years. It's been an amazing experience in the disability support area. And I came together with India Oakes, who is an amazing leader, advocate in the disability space and augmentative communication area. And then Yona Welker, who is a visionary and pioneer in AI and neurodiversity. And the three of us looked at all of our talents and relationships and things that we do. And we said, we really want to do something together. So we started thinking about doing an accelerator program specifically for disability-focused entrepreneurs. So you don't have to have a disability, but in that space of universal design and inclusivity. And when we started doing that, that was back in January. And as you guys all know, the investment environment and community kind of tanked, with the whole business things and startup investment. So we kind of put that on hold, but we still wanted to create something together. And so we decided our first offering would be the Xceptional Alliance's Epic Online Accessibility Event. And I give total credit to Yona Welker for being the architect of this, because he has put together a couple of amazing online events like hackathons for women in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, and he's just incredible with it. So when he came up with, we can do 10 sessions, 50 presenters, and this new idea of doing roundtable discussions instead of long form presentations, I was like, what? I've never heard of this. But my background has been putting together professional communication and education. So I've done that with a couple of my companies. And so I love this space, and reaching out to all of our colleagues and people who are, we call them change makers, right, in the disability community, has been an absolute joy for me. And so that's what we're doing. It's coming up on October 20th.
Excellent. And yes, we saw Silicon Valley Bank take down a lot of VC capital and suck the oxygen out of some of their sort of investment vehicles. That said, disabled talent and unconventional talent has always found it exceptionally hard to attract investment and VCs, even in times of relative plenty. So there was a great post from Kat Noon the other day, and she was quoting someone else, and I can't remember. So quoting, but she was saying, these people tend to back founders that are pale, male, and Yale, and people that are unconventional, that are not pale, male, and Yale, also have great ideas that can be turned into viable businesses. So I think that the intent is great. Let's hope that the market bounces back. I'm sure that there will be a recovery. But in the meantime, acting as a convening space seems like a really good way to start, bringing some of those people together. Deborah, I see you have a question.
Well, one question I was going to make the same comment as you, that no, the tank did not fall out for the disability community investments in January. It's always been this way, unfortunately. That's one reason why Billion Strong is focusing on entrepreneurs with disabilities as well as others. So I think often our community doesn't really understand the right way to talk to these funders too. So we'll see as our industry continues to mature. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Mai Ling, is that you have some letters in your name, and I know not everyone understands what the different initials are. So I was wondering if you could just, first of all, let the audience know what CCC-SLP means. And you talked about it already for a second, but I just want to let you do that first.
Sure. So it is a certificate of clinical competency in speech language pathology.
Cool. Just in case people didn't know, I think that our speech language pathologist, our occupational therapist, our physical therapist are the unsung heroes of I really do, of our community. I know that the difference that they made in my daughter's life, especially when she was young, but it was interesting as our relationship changed with these therapists as she's now 36. And so I just want hats off to the industry. I think there's a lot, we're seeing more and more speech therapists, physical therapists, mainly speech and occupational therapists coming into our space. And I really welcome them because I think they're playing such an important part, especially with all this new language stuff we're doing with AI, which is very interesting as well. I recently learned there's a new title in AI. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of new ones, but conversation starter. I want to be a conversation starter. There's a new position. You can be a conversation starter with AI. So anyway, but how do you believe being a speech therapist sort of influenced how you're looking at the community? I know you also are part of the community, just like we are, but like Neil and myself with ADHD, but I'm just curious how you think it influenced you.
Thank you so much. That is exactly the reason why we're doing this event is we want interdisciplinary, interprofessional practice. And as a speech language pathologist, it's all about communication. And we are talking about changing culture, vocabulary in the disability community, awareness, and it all comes from what you think these words mean. Right? And what your nonverbal communication is saying also. So I feel like there's a big place for speech language pathologists in this space. And I'm so excited for this actual event. We have 4 speech language pathologists that are going to be participating in different ways. And I've been really trying to share that and say, we need all our speech peeps to come on board, but also we need occupational therapists, teachers, designers, artists, entertainment people. We need everyone at the table. And how are we going to make change is to communicate and in whatever form. And that's the best part about accessibility, right? Using sign language, being able to chat, being able to read the captions. So all of this is moving towards universal design. I keep saying this is that someday us as disability advocates, we will be obsolete. We will be like the word processor because everything that is created with universal access in mind, but we're not there yet. We are at the early, just the layering stages. We're bringing awareness. We're showing people what the ramifications are. But someday we won't have to say, oh, where's that word processing computer? Because I actually had one of those in college. I dragged this thing around just so I could write papers. Can you imagine that? And we're going to look back and say, yeah, can you imagine that captions weren't always there or sign language wasn't always there? Hybrid events weren't always available. We're going to get there someday. And it's from the work that people like you guys have been doing for almost, I think you said 10 years this show has been running. That's what we're here for.
And I would say, I don't think that they're going to go away like the processors. I actually think what's going to happen is we're going to shift. I know that when we started doing this show 10 years ago, we're like, there's no way we're going to be doing it for very many years because society's going to wake up and figure out that accessibility really benefits all humans. But I think that instead what happens, especially with like using our speech language therapist, is I do not think they're going to go away. But I think that what they're going to be able to do is do their job so much better. We make it impossible, I believe, for speech therapists, a lot of these therapists to do their jobs. Speaking from experience, I have a daughter with Down syndrome who has continued to have communications issues. She was given speech therapy for 20 minutes once a week with 6 other students when she was in school. There is no way you can change your language with that little bit of time. So I believe what's going to happen, they're not going to go away. I think they're going to actually be able to be so much more effective because we're going to give them the tools they need to be successful. And that's a big hope I have with artificial intelligence. So, but I think their role is going to shift and change. But I think if anything, maybe we are going to value these leaders, these speech language experts, these therapists that really understand how our bodies work, how our muscles work. I just think what's happening is going to allow these people to bloom. I really do. But I'm an optimist, so I'm bad about that.
No, I definitely want to add to that. And thank you for clarifying. I absolutely also don't think that these human service positions are going to go away. What I meant was, though, in designing, the world and how we interact, that advocacy will eventually not be so needed as it is. So thank you for clarifying that.
We had entrepreneurs with disabilities in the past in the program. In your views, what are the roadblocks that they are facing today?
That's excellent. That's actually my jam. I have been focusing on spotlighting people who are working in this disability space in the innovation entrepreneur area for years. I have a podcast, so I've interviewed over 100, and I think it's up to 150 guests now. I have 3 books that I've published, and spotlighting people's specific stories of creating something, going through challenges, and continuing to progress. And so one of the threads that I keep finding is people are they're first of all hesitant to share that they have a disability with investors. So that is one of these startup pitches things, the elephant in the room, do you share it? So for some people where it is seen and visible, then that is something that they don't have to address. If it's not like myself, where ADHD, is that something that you want to share because that might be seen as a detriment? It might be seen as putting you behind all of the other entrepreneurs because you have a neurodiversity. And so it's becoming more and more acceptable, and there are more grants available and more scholarships and more specific programs out there, accelerator programs like Remarkable. I love what they're doing over there. I'm sure you guys know Molly Levitt. So people like us are helping to shed light on this, and that it is even something that is a gift, and something that is helping them to focus their power and their passion. So that's one area of it. Another thing is we're trying to get away from, we're calling it that cringe factor, like, oh, you have a disability and you're running a nonprofit. And we're trying to shift that to no, I'm a creator, I'm an innovator, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm fearless, I'm courageous, and I have a company. So I've definitely seen that as another shift, like, should I start a nonprofit or should it be a C Corp? So there's been things that, we've been talking about. I've been in coaching with a couple of entrepreneurs in accelerator programs. Also talking about the elephant in the room is, why should people care? A lot of people, when they're pitching, they're just trying to get the investor to invest money because they're going to make money back. We're in a different area. We want them to invest money and put, their hard-earned investment into something that's going to make a difference, impact investment. And that's different. And so helping the entrepreneur who is in that disability space to be able to convey that message and to move someone to understand that this is something that I should care about. So I would say those are the top 3 things that I'm finding.
Sometimes I also have the feeling that people go, if someone is disabled, there'll be entrepreneurs building something for their community. And that might not be always the case. How do you think we can also address that perception, that bias that exists, that people with disabilities should build stuff just for them and not for the larger communities?
Right. And so I'm finding that we're using words like inclusive design, and we need to be more simpler about it. Obviously I'm a wordsmith. I love language, but to get to the general population and for them to understand, we need to show them how this is going to affect them and how it's going to help them or their families. I'm even finding that with this conference. We're working on accessibility, and people don't know what that is. And I just started learning about urbanism. I didn't really understand that until my 27-year-old son sat me down and said, Mom, living in the suburbs, you're really sucking all of the resources from our taxes. And I was like, what? So, it's our responsibility to educate, and to educate, obviously, the entrepreneurs also, in that you are not just creating for this specific disability. You are literally creating because anybody can use it, and it will increase their quality of life and access and all of this. So I think it's education.
Excellent. And I fully agree. I think there's, real value in delivering inclusive business. Deborah put in the chat that people don't disclose because they might not get funded or might not get hired. People sometimes don't even realize that they have neurodivergent conditions. They go through life going, yeah, I mean, my child can't be ADHD because he's just like me.
Exactly.
Oh, Yeah, I got diagnosed in my late 40s, Deborah in her 50s. And then it's going backwards up my family,
It made
so
sense all of a sudden. Ah.
yeah. So, but I also think that that there are different. Impact investors are very different beasts to standard VCs. Um, but as one of the things that I'm really interested in is making disability inclusive businesses really profitable, because I keep repeating this, but I see no problem making good money from doing good things. In fact, I think it's incumbent upon us to make good money from doing good things. In fact, more money than from businesses that do bad things.
Yep.
And when we manage to flip that over, then it has a massive effect and impact on society. So I'm with you. Not everything can be a charity all of the time. It shouldn't be, because that doesn't self-sustain. We had that a great chat with Kurt Yeager a couple of weeks back, maybe a month back, where he's also looking at business and finance and repeatable business as a way of increasing the representation of people with disabilities in media, rather than just pointing and saying, put more disabled people in your films.
Yep.
It's so I think that this is really important, and Antonio's I think got a comment on that too.
I believe we're talking. I believe that VCs also hide their disabilities. So it's also I'm in a position of power, so I don't want to look at someone vulnerable as an investor. But what I wanted to ask me is that sometimes even entrepreneurs with disabilities, they might be in a vulnerable situation. They might be receiving benefits. They might be afraid that if we go into an entrepreneurial journey, they might lose some of the benefits. How can we make sure that if they want to embrace such a journey, they also do it in a safe way and don't put their lives and sometimes basic things in their daily lives at risk?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And there are starting to be amazing free resources available now. So I'm going to plug the National Disability Institute. There's a small business section there that Nikki Powis is heading, and she is also a presenter at the event. And what they're doing is just providing a plethora, inundating information, webinars, you name it, on how to get started, how to look at your funding, I think, the big question that you actually just brought up is, if I do this and I have an income stream, am I going to lose my medical support? How can we navigate that? And the best part of resources like that is that you now have someone that you can go to, you can talk to. And it's our responsibility, like I just did, is to get that information out there, because a lot of people who are just starting don't even know it's available. And so we need to just keep getting that out there, because they're used to the able-bodied, typical types of resources, which is like your local Kiwanis, your city small business information. And those places are not as equipped, obviously, to deep dive into the nuances and the niches of a person with disability who is starting up a company. And so we just have to keep making sure that these freely and wonderful available resources, that they know how to get to them.
That's extremely important. I think that obviously there's a setup that's different in every country around what benefits and people can get, and at what point working becomes a problem. And I think that this is something that happens a lot in the disability community, where people wish to work more, but also need the support. And it's a really difficult area to get right in terms of policy, because we know in the UK that the government has pushed extremely hard to get people off benefits and into work, possibly, and that was controversial. And on the other hand, in the US, there seems to be this trap where people can't work because the benefits are going to disappear. So these systems are almost entrapping you. So there do need to be pathways to enable people to transition into entrepreneurship and some kind of a support mechanism for this, so that people can really fulfill their potential. Deborah, I see you.
Yeah. Well, and I'll go right with that, in that I agree. I know often here in the United States, and the United Kingdom is about this as well, we have a tendency just to focus on ourselves. And we really need to make sure all of our entrepreneurs, including the entrepreneurs outside the US and the UK, are meaningfully included. And as you said, Neil, we get certified as entrepreneurs with disabilities by our countries that we are incorporated in, not all of our offices. It's your main incorporation. So it's very important that these programs be global, which is why, once again, Billion Strong's working on this with our country partners, because we want corporations to include us in their supply chains. But at the same time, we need to make sure it makes sense for the brands. I see some I know of a certification, for example, that they're certifying, things that do not make sense to corporations, that corporations do not buy. And accidentally, that can become a trap for our community as well, not really understanding what the true needs are of, a potential client, a potential funder. I remember when I first started in entrepreneurial in the early 2000s, people would say, what are y'all doing? What can you do? It's like, what do you need done? Okay, no, that's the wrong answer, because we have a tendency to sometimes, as entrepreneurs, try to boil the ocean instead of really being, we have to learn along the way, which is why it's so important that our entrepreneurs be more meaningfully included. And we're seeing so many cool programs that are coming up to support us. But one thing I would be curious about, Mai Ling, just to make sure that give a little bit of more attention to your conference coming up in a couple of weeks. Do you mind telling us, because I know we've already talked about some of the speakers, but do you mind just telling us a little bit more about, if people joined, what can they expect? Just to give a little love to the some of the speakers that are going to be joining you.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. Going back actually just to the, you were talking about policy and what we can do. We are actually starting out right after the keynote event, which is by Lydia Brown. She is with the National Disability Institute and an amazing internationally recognized speaker on disability advocacy. Right after that, we're going into accessibility, ethics, and justice. And that's right, our first event there. The keynote will be provided by Dr. Victor Pineda, who's also internationally recognized. And he has the amazing documentary. If you haven't seen it, it's 37 minutes, called Unconfined. It's incredible. It's his experience during COVID. And then India Oaks will then be moderating this conversation with Edmund Asaidu, who you've had as a guest. He's the administrator of the New York City Transit Authority, talking about accessibility there. Kelby Brick, we also know him. He's a lawyer working in the advocacy space. Rebecca Williford, another legal advocate, and then Tom Foley, who is the executive director of the National Disability Institute. So that's our first big roundtable discussion. And then right after that, we go right into how can we bring major public and private stakeholders to the table to talk about investment and growth and policy. And so this is, again, I'm going to give total. Yeah, I want to say Yona Welker is the one who was the architect for this and creating it. And then the people who are involved are shaping what those questions are going to be. So in that one, we have Ali Ingersoll, who was another former guest here, Molly Levitt with Remarkable, David D'Arcangelo is going to be the moderator, and he was recently commissioner of the, the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. Nat Lakowski, and she's very, very active on LinkedIn and her advocacy. And then Nikki Powis, who is with the Small Business Hub of the National Disability Institute. So, just coming around, we are addressing these two things that we're talking about right here. And then throughout the day, we're talking about lived experience, workplace environment. When do you talk about the accommodations that you need? And the people in there are people that who are leaders and pioneers and advocates specifically in this space. In this one, specifically to talk about is John Robinson. He's the president and CEO of Our Ability Inc. And he's doing right. So he's doing phenomenal wonderful job.
Once or twice, I believe. So I know that you have a lot of speakers, so it'd be hard to name them all. But how do you, how would somebody sign up for that? Is it a charge? Is it all in person? Is it, and I know some of these questions, so I'm just batting them over to you so the audience can hear them.
Thank you. It is free. It's 100% free. And it is on one part, it is a labor of love. I'd say we got started a little late and we don't have sponsor relationships. So for next year, we'll have a better, pool of companies to connect with. But right now, we are just clearing what our needs are. And we're also actually giving each of the presenters a small stipend to thank them for participating. So I'm really proud of that. Thank you so much. We have sponsorship for American Sign Language for every single presentation. And of course, we're going to have closed captioning available. And so go ahead, say that again.
No, fully accessible. All conferences should be fully accessible. It's no matter what, but certainly if they're talking to our community. So yeah, we appreciate you making all of those necessary steps.
Excellent. And I've been working with people who are in the deaf and hard of hearing community and low vision and blind, and they have been helping us to make sure that everything as far as the website, the registration, onboarding, all of that is accessible as much as it can be, because we are limited by that third-party platform, when you have a plug into Zoom or whatever. So doing our best. But I tell you, if you talk about legacy and what you've, worked your whole life for, I feel like this is one of those things that I will personally say, you know what? I feel like I really did do something big.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why we wanted to highlight what you're doing. We can't highlight everybody, but we did want to talk about, because it seemed very timely as we are talking a lot about identity of our community and really pulling our community together in a more powerful way that honors each other. So,
but it's also important to notice that the event is not going to take long. It's going to happen in just a few weeks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's upcoming.
Yep. Yeah. I'm starting to get nervous.
When is it?
It's October 20th. It's a Friday. It's all day. It starts at 7 on the West Coast, 10 on the East Coast, and then for you guys it'll be a little bit later over in the UK. Recordings will be available, and that's for people who choose to be a part of the community. But it's only $19.99, so I feel like it's a nominal amount, and that'll be for access to all of the recordings, the chat transcripts, and the what is that called when you're like, oh my gosh, help me word finding when you're talking and the words come up. Closed caption.
Captioning, not closed, or just captioning. Yeah, you don't say closed or open. We just caption now.
Captioning. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know. I have brain freeze. We get that.
Yes.
So how would somebody register? What is the URL to register?
It's exceptionalalliances.com.
Okay.
Excellent. And I like the name Alliances, right? Because this is something that all of us on this podcast right now believe wholeheartedly in, is building bridges and bringing people together, because it's all too often that people go off and do their own thing, and it's about that community again. So Thank you for including that in your very naming of what they're doing.
And also, Neil, people are so bad about thinking they're doing something for the first time. Nobody else ever thought of it. Nobody's ever done it. I hear that so often. And it's like, let's take time to celebrate each other, but also celebrate what everybody else is doing. We duplicate things.
Never. I think sometimes people are influenced by the clickbait of the news headlines. There's always someone that is the first.
I know. They're the very first person that thought of this. It's like, okay. I guess we haven't been doing this for 10 years. But how many episodes? Yeah, it's like, no, all of us are doing this together. Let's celebrate collaboration and not make it all about us. Let's make it about everybody else. So that's what we try to really encourage here. So that's why we share other people's stories every week for free.
Absolutely.
Exactly. We appreciate our sponsors. So
yeah, but that's what helps keep it free, right? So thank you, Amazon, and thank you for years worth of support from My Clear Text with all of the captioning. It's super important for us, and we're sincerely grateful for that long-term support and allyship. Yes. So thank you very much, Mai Ling. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. I wish you every success with your conference. I hope that you have a holiday booked directly afterwards, because I know what it's like organizing these things.
Yes.
I once got talked into running 6 simultaneous in-person events for Global Accessibility Awareness Day in different cities around Europe. I went on holiday the afternoon we finished the event because I really needed it.
Yeah,
And
it's exhausting.
I'm very wary of the guy that persuaded me to do that, and any more bright ideas he comes up with. So I wish you all the very best. I'm sure it'll be a great success. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored. Thank you.